right? We've still got more people joining. Guys, feel free to use the chat and just say hi to each other and just start talking, share contact details if need be. Like I said, feel free to just share your business. If you've got a business that you want other people to know about, go ahead and share. We've got Martin who's just joined us. Thanks for joining, Martin. Adelaide, we've got Rue. Awesome, awesome. Thank you for joining, guys. Much appreciated. We've got Tabo. Tabo, the main man, has joined us as well. Thanks for joining, bro. Hi, Moila. Can't remember if I said hi to Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us. Okay. Right. As I'm going along, because I'm hosting this, as I'm going along, there might be people that are joining. So if I stop for a second, it's because I'm admitting people as we're going along, whilst we do the talk. So for the guys that are coming here for the first time, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully this won't be the last. My name is Muzzie, and this is our little family, the Zim Property Investors. So it's predominantly a lot of Zimbabweans that are interested in property, but it's not exclusive just to Zimbabweans. So if you're not Zimbabwean, don't feel like you're not welcome here. We welcome everyone in this group, and all we do here is share information and help each other in our property journeys. We've got people in the group that are just starting out, never done anything in property whatsoever, just collecting information, getting to understand. We've got people that are already in the property journey who are building their portfolios and looking to leverage knowledge, leverage resources, leverage locations with other people. And we also have some seasoned investors who are just looking to put funds into new projects. It's a mixture of everyone, so we help each other as much as possible. And we would gladly have any of you guys who are considering joining our community to come and join us. With everyone who is part of this, I'm hoping you would have seen the invitation, and the invitation mentioned that we're going to be talking about rent to rent today. And I kindly volunteered to be talking about rent to rent. So as we're going along, guys, this is going to be interactive. So any questions that you have as we're going along, feel free to drop them on the chat. And later on, we'll just open way for anyone who wants to ask anything specific. So we can just open it up to the guys to just have a chat. For anyone who wants to know how long this is going to take, our calls usually take about an hour and a half-ish. So around 7 o'clock, we finish. However, if it finishes earlier, that's fine. And no one here is held to stay until 7. If you want to leave, feel free to go. There is no hard feelings there. We understand that everyone is busy and they've got some stuff to do. So I am going to be sharing my screen with you guys and just go through a little presentation that I prepared for you. Is everyone okay with that? This is the interactive part. If everyone is okay with it, just say okay on the group, on the chat, please.
Okay.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I recognize that voice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I'm not on my own here. I want to hear everyone else talking. Right. Sorry, guys, just admitting more people who are joining us. Hi, Rutendo. Thank you for joining. Leaving early. No problem, birthday boy.
Thanks, brother. So yeah, you guys have fun. Like I said, I'll be watching the video later on retrospectively. So
Will do.
I wish you all a great evening and a pleasant week.
Enjoy their day on our behalf.
Much appreciated.
Have
Take
a
care.
good day.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Manu. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, so I need confirmation from someone, please, just to let me know that you can see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so I've still got more people joining. Oh, Celinda joined already. Welcome back, Celinda.
Sorry, I was joining on my laptop. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We've also got 865741, aka Deniwa, joining. Thank you for joining. Okay, so I'm just going to start talking through this slideshow, which is one that I prepared a bit earlier. And I might go through some of these things a little bit rapidly. And if there's any questions, like I said, please drop them on the chat and we will go back through them and we can just have a quick discussion about them. Okay, so this presentation here is sort of like predominantly on serviced accommodation, but it is still on a rent-to-rent basis. So we're going to be talking about rent-to-rent and sort of touching on serviced accommodation. And there's someone who's taking over my screen. Please stop moving your mouse. Okay, so I'll start off by introducing myself. Okay, so for those who don't actually know who I am, my name is Muzzie, and for the Zimbabweans in the chat, that is very simple for you guys to say and you understand it. But for everyone else, that's why I actually shorten it to Muzzie, because the name can be very complicated. Yes, I am from Zimbabwe, surprise, surprise. I grew up in Harare when I grew up in Harare. I was born in Harare up until I was 15, moved to Bulawayo for 2 years, and then came to England when I was 17. This here is my lovely wife, Charlene, who is in the other room. She doesn't know that I'm embarrassing her right now, but the recording is going to show that. And this right here is my daughter, Imani. And this slide itself, now when people ask me, why is it that you do what you do? Why is it that you invest in property and you go through all of these problems that come with property and investing? Why do you spend hours on the phone talking to people about this and stuff like that? This is the answer to why I do it. This is my why. Sort of like a lot of people who are listening here, I know you will understand that in everything that you do, you're going to have challenges. And if it's worth doing, you need to always keep reminding yourself why you're doing it. And this is my why. This is why I do what I do. Okay, so I like this quote here. I don't know if anyone else has heard it before. The secret to success is own nothing and control everything. Now, this is a concept that actually supports the strategy of rent to rent. So this is a concept of not actually owning anything, but controlling everything so you can generate cash flow from someone else's asset. So what we're going to talk about today is what is rent to rent? What can you do with the rent to rent deal? Where and how can you find a rent to rent deal? And how can you maximize the profits and minimize the risks? So we're just going to go through these topics and hopefully they'll be helpful to you guys. So what is rent to rent? So as mentioned earlier on in the quotes that I mentioned, it is essentially controlling people's sort of like properties, controlling someone else's assets to be able to generate cash flow from something that you do not own. So I'm just going to go through an example here of the difference between actually purchasing a property and getting cash flow from it, and renting a property to get cash flow from it. So this is just an example. So these numbers are just made up. Now, if you've got a rental in an area where it's £1,000, I'm gonna go for 5 bedrooms. So if a 5 bedroom is gonna go for £1,000, for a service accommodation, income is about 2,500 and the bills about 500. I said 500 because I just assumed that each room is £100, which is a rough way of actually calculating what your bills are gonna be. And this is just roughly. Some places in England are gonna be cheaper, some places are gonna be more expensive. Okay, so if we go through the process of purchasing the property, let's assume the property is 100K, you're gonna need to raise a deposit of 25 grand. Usually a mortgage provider is gonna give you 75% of the mortgage if you're buying it as an investment. You're gonna have to raise stamp duty of 3,000. The legals, talking to the solicitors and that is gonna be about £1,000. So your total outlay, how much money you're gonna have to raise is £29,000. So your mortgage, we're gonna assume is about £500, which is a realistic figure. So the cash flow here is 1,500. This is coming from the fact that you're paying £500 for your mortgage, you're paying £500 for your bills, your income as a service accommodation is 2,500. So your cash flow is 1,500. Now we're gonna use the same numbers to make it a rent to rent and see what the numbers actually show. There we go. Okay, so setting up and acquiring a property for rent to rent. It's the exact same property. This time we're not actually buying it. This time we're just renting it. We're actually taking control of it. So you take control of this property, setting it up, i.e. the minor touch-ups, having to do the furnishings, paying the deposits, the first month's rent and stuff like that. On average, you're gonna be paying about £4,000, depending on where you are. In London, it's gonna be a lot more. Up north in Burnley, it's gonna be a lot less, because if you're gonna look at the deposit and the rent, the first month's rent, it will be dependent on where you are. So let's assume it's about £4,000, we're taking an average. Your cash flow here is gonna be £1,000. Now this is based on the fact that, sorry, someone has unmuted themselves. Okay, sorted. So your cash flow is £1,000 on this one here, because your rent that you're paying is 1,000, your bills are £500, and your income for an SA is 2,500. So it's £1,000. Now, if you're looking at these two pictures, you may be thinking, okay, cash flow for a purchased property is more than the cash flow of a rent to rent, which may be true. And bear in mind, when I say purchased, on this example, I'm assuming the person who bought the property is actually managing it themselves. That's why you don't see any management costs or any management percentage fees on there, okay? However, to be able to get that 1,500, you had to pay 29,000 to get started. The advantage of a rent to rent is with that same £29,000, you can get at least 7 of these properties, because it's going to be about £4,000 to set it up. And if it's £4,000 to set it up, with the 29K, you get 7 of them. 7 of them producing the same amount, just an assumption, is going to be £7,000 with the same amount. So if you look at it as on a perspective of sort of managing a property rather than purchasing it, you can generate a lot more cash flow rather than when you're actually purchasing an asset. Now, when you purchase it, obviously that property is yours, you're in control of it, you decide what happens with it and stuff like that. And you have slightly less control when you actually have a property under management. However, assuming that it's an agreement of 5 years, for 5 years, imagine you're making 7 grand a month for properties that you don't even own yourself. So these are the advantages of a rent to rent. I hope that makes sense. And like I said, as we're going along, populate the chat box and we will ask, we will talk about it a little bit further. Okay, so what can you do with the rent to rent deal? You can run it as an HMO or you can run it as a service accommodation. Now, these are the two main ones that we talk about, but there's so many other things that you can do with the rent-to-rent deal. Essentially, rent-to-rent, we don't call it a strategy. We call it a tool that you use to acquire the property. What you then do with that property is the strategy. So I acquire it rent-to-rent, and then I HMO it strategy. I acquire it rent-to-rent, and then I SA, service accommodation. That's the strategy. And you can do, a lot of people may know about the social housing aspect, and you can do a rent-to-rent on shops. You can take on a shop from someone else just to rent it for a monthly period, and then you can actually make more money out of running that shop. It's still a rent-to-rent tool that you use to acquire an asset, and then the strategy is what you do with it afterwards. By the way, this picture of a service accommodation is actually one of our units. We didn't Google that one. So if any of you guys want to come and stay in this unit, get in touch. I'll sort you out. Okay, serviced accommodation. Just going to quickly touch on this. This, again, is another one of our units in Northampton. So what is serviced accommodation? I'm going to just ask you guys to try to stay on mute so we don't disturb each other. What is service accommodation? So a service accommodation is a strategy which is starting to be more and more popular, especially in England. So it's essentially what many people call Airbnb. We try to avoid the term Airbnb because it comes with a bit of a bad rep. But essentially, service accommodation is where you dress up your property really nice and treat it as a hotel. So you furnish it and actually put all the requirements for anyone to be able to walk into the property and just live, rather than have to actually set it up themselves. So people take on a service accommodation on a short-term basis. You've got tourists that use service accommodations, or you've got contractors who move to different places and actually use these properties to stay in. So hopefully that makes sense. So where and how do you find rent-to-rent deals? Regardless of what you're going to use for them, where do you find them? So one of the first ones, common ones, is an online platform. So a lot of you guys may have already heard of Rightmove, Zoopla, On the Market, Spare Room, Gumtree. There's plenty others that many people don't actually understand, but it's an online platform. People actually advertise their properties all the time. So there's platforms like the Rightmove where you mainly find agents advertising, and then you've got Gumtree where you can actually find direct to landlords, direct to vendors advertising. So you can use any of these platforms to find these properties. Property agents. So instead of going online, you can actually go straight to the agents, the sales and lettings, and actually go into their shops. Now they're pretty much everywhere. Wherever you are right now in the UK, wherever you are, there's a sales and letting agent somewhere where you are. You can go and speak to them. You can go find out if they have what you're looking for. Direct to vendor. So this is leafleting and letters. So I mentioned on the online platform that you've got a platform like Gumtree where you can get directly to the vendor, directly to the landlord. You can also leaflet. So you can actually just get a leafleting company to deliver leaflets around your area or your chosen location, and just highlight what it is that you're looking for and see if you can solve their problems. That's actually really good, and it gets quite a lot of returns. So the leafleting element or direct to vendors, if you're looking to, you're looking for HMOs, for example, you can go onto the council website. It will give you a list of all the HMOs in the area. It's got the register, it's public information. You can get that from the council's website, or you can just ring them or go to them, they'll give it to you. And you can just send letters directly to all of those landlords and just mention that you are looking to manage these properties and see how you can help them and how they can help you. Social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Majority of people that I speak to are a bit iffy about coming out online and say, look, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for, telling people on Facebook that this is what I'm doing. It can be And I completely understand. It can be quite nerve-wracking to actually talk to anyone or publicize the fact that you are in property, especially when you're starting out, because property comes with a rep of you are very, very wealthy to be able to get involved in property. So not many people are open enough to just come out and say, I'm doing property. However, social media is one of the most powerful ways to generate leads. Because the more you talk about the fact that you're in property, it doesn't matter how far into your journey you are, it's creating a perception. That perception is what drives people to then respond. So it doesn't matter what they say, you are building that perception, and you want to get to a point where if anyone thinks anything to do with the house, living, property, they think, there's that person who I keep seeing on Facebook, there's that person who I keep seeing on Instagram, let me reach out to them. That's where a majority of your leads are going to come from. Networking. This is one of my favorite ones. Networking, obviously 2020 is a little bit of a question mark, but there is networking events running anywhere and everywhere. Wherever you are, there's a networking event running. What we are doing right now is actually networking. So you have just joined the Zimbabwe Property Investors Network. And before the virus started, these networks were happening in person quite a lot. So you've got a lot of property networking events. You've also got business networking events. Majority of people who are looking to be in property are looking for two things. One, they're looking for deals. Two, they're looking for the money to fund those deals. And then the knowledge then comes afterwards, or the knowledge comes before you actually do all of them. Business networking events are really, really good platforms to be able to find the funds that you're looking for. Property networking events are really good platforms to find the deals and the knowledge, because you'll find both of them in there. So networking is another way of finding your property deals, your rent-to-rents. Speak to people that are doing it, speak to people that are looking for it, speak to people that are looking to give it away. And you're only going to do that by networking. Now, the good thing about the current situation is majority of networking is being done virtually, just like what we're doing right now. So you can actually join networking events from the comfort of your own home. I would suggest, if you are looking to build a property portfolio, you're looking to raise funds, you're looking to gain more knowledge, try by all means to utilize this as much as possible. I know it's not the same if you're not actually face to face with someone, but this will have to do for now, because that's all we can do. Try to join as many of them as possible, collect information, collect contacts, and reach out to people and ask loads of questions. So networking is one of my best ways of finding deals. Okay, so what could go wrong? This is where quite a lot of people light up and say, see, I'm not really into property because there's loads of things that can go wrong. It doesn't matter how good anything is. If you really think about what could go wrong, you will find it. And in whatever you are currently doing now, things have gone wrong. In whatever you're going to do, whether it's property or it's something else, things will go wrong. So it's good to actually acknowledge that things do go wrong, and acknowledge it, face it, see what you can do about it. So we're going to go through this. This is more sort of like orientated to service accommodation, but it still kind of raises the right point. So no or not enough guests booking the property. There's nothing worse than actually taking on a service accommodation unit, set up to pay the rent, set up to pay the bills, and you don't even have one person book that property, because that's where the income is coming from. So essentially you have not taken on an asset, you've taken on a serious liability. So that's a scary point. Too much upfront cost. So with the example that I talked through earlier on, even though I was saying 29 grand compared to 4 grand, there's some people that are looking at the 4 grand thinking, I haven't got 4 grand, that's too much money. So too much upfront cost is something that could go wrong in the property front. No profits even at high occupancy. So imagine you've actually done your calculations and you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna make a profit at this point. And then you take on guests and you're charging a certain amount each night. The whole month has been occupied. but you haven't made a profit. So that's another thing that could go wrong. New regulations coming from the government. There's not much we can do about that. Regulations come in, out every other time, and there's not much you can do. And if a regulation comes and changes things, I'll give an example of HMOs. People who were running HMOs in areas that didn't have what's called Article 4. Article 4 got introduced and it changed the game. Obviously, if you're already in there, it doesn't affect you too much. But if you're looking to invest in that area and then Article 4 is introduced, it changes everything. So regulations being changed by the government can affect your business in terms of property. Landlords may want to pull out of the agreement. As mentioned before, compared to owning the property and just managing the property, one of the downsides is you're controlling a property that doesn't actually belong to you. So you haven't got too much of a stronghold on what's going to happen with it. So the owner could turn around and say, I don't want this anymore, get out of my house. So that's another thing that is worth mentioning, because it's one of the scary parts of getting yourself involved in rent to rent. Bad guests. Bad guests. We love bad guests. So quite a lot of times you have people that talk about service accommodation from the outside point of view. People that say, I'm never going to be involved in service accommodation because this could go wrong, this could go wrong. One of the main points that they raise is the fact that you have bad guests. You have drug dealers that come and terrorize the property. You have people that come in with the intention to just ruin your business completely. And that does happen. And I know already that there's some SA operators in this group now who are watching, who are thinking, yes, I know, Muzzie, I've gone through it. And it's a painful experience, but it's part of the business. So what can you do about it? So a lot of times we want to raise the problems. The difference is those people that are going to be successful are those that identify the problems and work their way around them. And then people that are not going to be successful is people that will identify the problems and just enjoy talking about the problems without looking at the solutions. So what can we do? Now, ideally, if we were in like a bit of a classroom setting, I'll be asking questions. What can you do about this problem? What can you do about that one? I'm just going to go through each of them now and just mention what we can do. There's a lot more things that you can do, but I'm just going to point out a few. So not enough guests booking a property. Due diligence and marketing. So the guys that are already running essays now completely understand this concept. But if you're starting out and you want to start from scratch and you're thinking, okay, how do I avoid not having enough guests? So when we say due diligence, do the research in that area. You need to understand what is happening in that area. What's tourism like? What are the contractors like? What are the chances you can actually get people moving in and out of your property? Have a look at what other properties are in terms of other service accommodations, for example, other HMOs in the area, for example, and have a look at their occupancies. There's some online platforms where you can actually check occupancy rates for certain areas, for certain types of properties, and you can get that understanding before you even get into rent to rent, before you even get a property. You have a good understanding for what you're potentially going to be getting. And then it then becomes your responsibility to up your standards so that in terms of competition, if I'm going to be a guest and I'm looking at 20 properties in the area that I want to go to, why should I choose yours? What's so different about yours? Make sure you identify that. So you can only increase the chances of your property being taken on by someone. And that's by doing due diligence and some good marketing. Make sure as many people as possible are aware that your property is on there. They're aware that your property is available. They're aware that your property is one of the best that they can ever go to. So that is one way to get rid of the issue of not having enough booking. Too much upfront cost. So I'm looking at that £4,000 and thinking that is a lot of money. I don't know where I'm going to get that. That's far too much. I'm not going to get involved. So you can negotiate a deposit free. You can negotiate a rent-free period. You can take out the furniture on credit. So if I actually sort of rewind and start from sort of scratch, when you take on a property from a landlord and you want to manage it as a company, you're not taking on the property as a person who's living in it. So if I were to take on a property, or if I were to apply for a tenancy through an agent, and I want to live in that property, and then I ask for a rent-free period, they'll think I'm crazy. Or if I ask for no deposit, they'll think I'm absolutely ridiculous. As the person who lives in the property, it's unheard of to ask for this. However, because you're a company and they are aware, make sure they're aware. They are aware that you are taking on this property as a company. You're going to manage the property. You're running a business. So you can negotiate things like deposit-free and rent-free. And you can use deposit-free as a concept of, well, the people that come into the property are going to be paying a deposit. That deposit serves the same purpose as the deposit that you're asking me for. So why don't you and I have access to that same deposit so I don't have to pay anything? It can work, it might not work, but it's worth a try. Rent-free periods, you can ask for a rent-free period and just let them know that what we do when we take on properties, we furnish them to high standards. We do all the work to make the property look nice, i.e. actually increase the value of your property. Is there any chance you could give us a month just to do that to your property? And then we can start paying rent the month after that. Those are one of the other reasons that you can utilize to try to get a rent-free period. Take out furniture on credit. You can go buy furniture in IKEA cash and buy £3,000 worth of furniture and just buy it all and bring it back. Or you can take on the option that they offer of taking this furniture on credit, and you can pay it within a 12 to 18 month 0% at 0%. That way you actually pay back this monthly. So you're still paying £3,000, but then it's more of a buy now, pay later. And because you're paying back monthly, you're not the one who then pays for it. It's the guests, it's the tenants that pay for it. Ultimately, upfront, you then pay as little as possible. So I hope that kind of makes sense in terms of reducing the upfront cost. Those are things that you can do. There's a few more other things that you can do, but those are the main ones. So landlord may want to pull out of the agreement. Okay, that's a fair thing to be worried about. Let's see. Okay, align your management agreement to protect your finance. Okay, so when you take on a property from a landlord and you're taking it on as a company, there's agreements that are put in place. There's agreements that are signed between you and the landlord. These agreements need to be aligned with your protection and the landlord's protection as well. So when I say protect your finance, if you've invested £4,000, for example, and based on the calculations that you have of the monthly cash flow, you need to work out how long it's going to take you to make that £4,000 back. So if it's going to take you 6 months to make that £4,000 back, your agreement needs to have a minimum of 6 months break clause, which means in that break clause, we call it a break clause, after 6 months, the landlord can pull out, you can pull out, or you can just extend it for as long as you want to. If you put and stipulate in your agreements that if any of you actually break that before the end of that clause, they are liable to paying or refinancing you for the money that you've actually put in. So it protects you. So this is actually a legal document. It's a legal binding document that protects your finance. So even if the landlord decides, I'm going, you are assured to make sure that your money actually comes back. It protects your finance. So whatever you've put in is going to come out. In many cases, if you create good rapport with these people, with the landlords, with the vendors, you most likely won't need to worry about any of this because they will keep you in the deal. If you're making money and they're making money, there's no reason for them to worry about it. It's just going to go smooth. However, we always plan for the best, but we also need to anticipate the worst. Okay, no profits even at high occupancy. So as mentioned before, imagine you have guests come in throughout the entire month. 31 days, you had someone in every single night. And at the end of the month, you haven't made a profit. You've actually made a loss. What could have gone wrong then? So accurate deal calculation to make rental offers. So if you actually have a property that's occupied for the entire month and you haven't made a profit, something is wrong in your calculations. So you're either not charging enough on your 90 rate, or you've agreed a deal that is too expensive. Okay, so when I say too expensive, a landlord can ask for whatever they want on a monthly basis. They can ask for anything. And then if you get excited and take on a deal just because it's your first deal, or you just want to have a property deal and you haven't looked at the numbers, if you take on too much, for you to make a profit, you're going to have to charge even more on a nightly basis. I'm just looking at service accommodation here. Even for HMOs, that would work the same. You'd have to increase your rent. But then increasing your rent isn't as easy as just saying, do you know what, I'm going to increase my 90 rate. It needs to be competitive, because people are not just going to look at your property. They're going to be looking at a few properties. And if you're just ridiculously high compared to everyone else, you're just not going to get anyone come in. So you have to be competitive. And if that competitive rate, 90 rate or rent, is not covering your bills and the rent, it's not going to work. You're not going to make any money. So you need to do all this calculation as part of your due diligence. So when you research whether this area is going to work for the strategy you're going for, you're also looking at, for example, if I'm taking on an HMO, it's a 5-bed HMO that I'm taking on just as the example that I'm looking at. The rent, the landlord is going to ask for whatever rent they want. What I need to find out before I even make any offers, before I even accept, is what's the room rate in that area. So how much can I actually make out of this 5-bed? So if my 5-bed and the landlord is asking for £1,000, just like what the example says, and I know that this area is going to generate £500 per room, then I know at 5 rooms occupied is 2,500. I'm paying £1,000 for rent, and I'm also paying £500 for the bills. So I know I'm making £1,000 at full occupancy. You can look at all of that before you even speak to anyone. You can look for that property on Rightmove, do the calculations. You can check on Rightmove as well what the room rates are. You can speak to agents on what the room rates are. You do that calculation before you even make an offer. At that point, you already have a very good idea of how much money you're going to be making from a deal. And then if the rent that the landlord is asking for is far too high, you also can actually make an offer. Just because the landlord says, this is how much I'm looking for, it doesn't mean you just accept it. You also tell them what you're looking for, because it needs to work for both of you. Yeah. So don't be afraid to make an offer. However, make an offer that is justified based on your calculations. And don't be afraid to tell the landlord that, based on my calculations, I think I'm going to be making X amount from this property. However, I wouldn't be able to make this amount if I have to pay this rent. So tell them that if I have to pay this amount of rent and then pay this amount for the bills, and all I can make is this, it's not going to work. Just be open. There's nothing wrong with being open about it. Quite a lot of people make the assumption that if you tell the landlords too much, they will want to go away and do it themselves. You'll be surprised how many landlords don't even want to manage their own properties. And a lot of landlords that go out looking for people to take on their houses, it's not because they don't know how to do it. It's not just because they're not sure what it is that they're actually doing. Majority of times, they may know how to do it. They may know exactly how much money they can make. They just don't want the hassle. So their problem is they just don't want the hassle. And then you can come in and take on that hassle from them. You pay them an X amount. They can pay their mortgage and actually still have a bit of a profit. You can take on the property, run your business, and make a cash flow out of it. A win-win situation. It needs to be good for both parties, not one. And if they're not budging whatsoever, and they're not coming down, and the deal doesn't look good, be strong enough to walk away. Don't get yourself into a financial rut just because you really want a deal. Okay, new regulations from the government. So as mentioned, this is more on the service accommodation side. So right now, there's only the 90-day rule in London. There's no other SA regulation. So service accommodation is a good strategy to jump into in terms of regulations, because it's not regulated right now. People can actually just turn their properties into service accommodation anywhere. And it is profitable. At the minute, obviously, the challenge is with the current situation with the virus. And with service accommodation, as you go into winter, it slows down a little bit. And you might need to consider all of that before you actually get started. If you don't have a service accommodation unit whatsoever, and this is the first time you're doing it, and you're looking to take one on, I would suggest you have a chat with someone who's already running service accommodation in the area that you're looking for, and have a very good conversation with them and find out what the challenges are before you get yourself involved, because service accommodation is not as easy as it was before. Okay, bad guests booking the property. Now, this is definitely going to happen. If you're going to run a service accommodation, and majority of SA providers, especially in this group, have already gone through this. So take necessary measures to reduce the chances. So I said reduce the chances, not absolutely eliminate them, because that's next to impossible. There's some really crazy stories that I've heard, and there's some really crazy ones that I have that I've also experienced myself. This happens. So when I say take necessary measures, you can do things like getting noise detectors, getting cameras, making sure you take on IDs, you take on deposits, just to make things a little bit more difficult for people that are looking to come and trash your property. But even with all those measures, there's times where you're still going to have someone who's just going to find their way around and damage your property. Just be aware of it. However, take necessary measures to reduce the chances. There's things that you can do to try to make sure your exposure is limited as much as possible. Okay, hope that makes sense. Righty then. So, how should it be? How it should be? Okay, so these again are pictures from our units. These haven't been Googled. These are pictures from our units, and this is a property. This is actually one property, a one bed that we have in Coventry. And it sort of gives an idea, just by looking at the pictures, of what exactly you need to be aiming for. There's service accommodation units that look far better than this that I've seen, absolutely immaculate, very beautiful. And however, that doesn't mean because you've dressed it up like this, it's definitely going to be occupied. It doesn't guarantee it. And also it doesn't mean if you're not dressed up like this and it's not looking as nice as this, you're definitely not going to have anyone. That's not the case. Making it look as nice as possible and taking really nice pictures makes the chances a little bit higher to be able to get your guests to come and stay in your property. So this is an interesting story about one of the bad guests. So I'll just go back and show you this. This is how it should be. This is the beautiful property that we have, and this is how it looks. This is how it looked when we went in, when one of the guests that we had, two gentlemen who said they've come in for work. They're just going to need 3 nights because they're working in Coventry. Bottom left-hand corner shows me that I was having a chat with one of them, and I was really not happy. So majority of people will know that for service accommodation hotels, you're not allowed to smoke in the property anyway. And we came in and we could smell from far away. Before we even got to the property, we could actually smell smoke. We could smell a lot more than smoke. And then walking in, initially they resisted us actually getting into the property. We went into the property and this is what we found. This carpet here on the top left, we had to throw that away because it actually was burnt. They covered the smoke detector with socks to make sure that we don't actually hear anything go off. And this is just within 3 days. And the reason we came to the property is because they were making quite a lot of noise, and the next door neighbors gave us a call. So this is just to show that service accommodation is not always all hunky-dory. We're all having fun. People come in and go out, we make loads of money and then just move on. This also happens as well. Okay, so we mentioned what rent-to-rent is, what you can do with the deal, where and how you can find it, and how you can maximize the profits and minimize the risks. So minimize your upfront cost and maximize your rental income. So this is just the motto that we usually go for. When we take on a property, try to pay the least amount not scamming the other person, not trying to make it a bad deal for them, minimizing the cost. If you remember when I was talking about this, I was talking about reducing the cost by paying, taking on furniture on credit. You can have a rent free by increasing the value of someone else's property by doing it up really nicely. You can reduce the deposit itself, not pay the deposit, not actually saying that you're not going to give the deposit to the landlord. You're just saying that the deposit that your tenants or your guests are going to be paying, the landlord will have access to it. That way you don't have to pay. So that's what I mean by minimize the upfront cost. I'm not saying if the area, the 5-bed in that area is £1,000, you make an offer of £200. That's ridiculous. That's you trying to take away from someone else. The deals need to be a win-win for both parties. So minimize your upfront cost and maximize your rental income. Do what you can to the property to make sure that the income is maximized. If it's a range, if the rooms are running at a range of 450 and 550, do everything you can to make sure that the property can be rented out as close to 550 as possible. If the range of a nightly rate is around £100 to 150, do as much as you can to the property to make sure it's appealing enough to get people to actually pay £150. Okay, thank you for the person who's clearing this up. So we've got to that point where I can start asking questions and I can stop talking because I'm tired too. Okay, so I know there's quite a few things that are going on here. There's quite a few messages that I can see here. Emmanuel.
Okay. The bit you mentioned about, so you negotiate the deposit with the landlord and you say that it will be the tenants that will pay the deposit. He'll have access or she'll have access to it. How does that work if you're going to be having guests who are staying 3 days, 4 days and stuff like that? How do you give it after you accumulate all of the money pays, then give the deposit? How do you go about it?
Okay, so when collecting deposits on your service accommodation unit, so you come in and take on my property for 2-3 days, and then I say you're going to need to pay a deposit, it's calling it a damage deposit of £200 extra on top of the nightly rate. Mm-hmm. That £200 stays with us until you check out. If we then go back into the property, or the cleaners go into the property and check it and make sure that everything is fine, everything is good, thank you, Emmanuel, here's your £200, it goes. Okay. So essentially what the landlord is asking me to pay for is a damage deposit. Right? So if anything happens in that property and the property is damaged in any way whatsoever, that's what that £200 is for. Okay. So instead of me paying the landlord £200 to then take £200 from you and then give you £200 and then get £200 from them, when you pay the £200, wherever it sits, it's accessible to me and the landlord. Essentially, I'm managing this property. So if there's any damage, I fix it with your damage deposit. Right, okay. Yeah, and then it works the same with HMOs as well. So if the landlord says, I need you to pay a deposit of 5 weeks rent, whatever it is, okay? I pay the deposit to the landlord, the tenants come in and they pay a deposit. So if I'm paying 1,500 to the landlord, and then I collect 1,500 from the tenants and hold it, and then when we're finished, I hand back over that 1,500 and then take the 1,500 back from the landlord, it's a pointless activity. Please unlock your device for this. It's something that not many people actually understand, that you could just let the tenants put the deposit in a deposit protection scheme, give the landlord access to that same deposit. Yeah. Because it serves the exact same purpose.
Do you dress the properties yourself? I mean, they look so lush. I mean,
hey, I've got an eye. No. I don't.
Or is it the missus who does it?
I do not want to take credit from my wife. She does an amazing job.
Awesome. No, it's good.
So who dresses the property? That was your question. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
my
was.
wife dresses the property. And
Wow.
if that's your passion, if it's something that you enjoy doing, dressing properties, then absolutely go for it. Otherwise, I would always recommend you leverage it. There's people who dress properties as their job. It takes far
Yeah.
lot less time. Just pay them to do the job and then get it done.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Question from Celinda. Celinda, are you here?
Hi, yeah.
Hey, I can read your question, but I just wanted to hear you say it.
I just wanted to ask how, if the whole situation with the current pandemic has affected
Yeah.
how many deals. So, for instance, for someone who's starting, is it a good time to start, or would you advise them to wait a bit because properties are just flying off the shelf right now because of the whole stamp duty thing? So I'm just wondering whether landlords are still willing to consider rent to rent, or to just pause on it until maybe next year. I don't know.
A bit after, yeah. Okay. There's a saying that we have. Actually, I'm just gonna say this first. Everything that I'm sharing here is based on my experience. Just because I have done it and it's worked, it does not 100% guarantee that if you do exactly what I did, it's going to work for you. I'm only sharing my opinion. I'll say that on camera. However, there's a saying that we have in property that the best time to buy a house, or the best time to get involved in property investment, was yesterday, and the next best time is today. So today it's COVID. Last year it was Brexit. The year before that was something else. There's always going to be something, always going to be something. And if we always wait until something goes away, something else will pop up, and then we'll decide, okay, let's wait until that goes away. Something else will pop up, and then, oh, let's wait for that to go away. Before you know it, 20 years is gone. Now is always the best time to actually get involved. That's my opinion. And yes, we have taken on properties during the lockdown. We actually doubled our portfolio during the lockdown, during this pandemic. Now, whether this is absolutely advisable for everyone, it's just my opinion. We did it and it's worked for us. Does it bring challenges? Absolutely. Is it painful? Absolutely. Does it work? Sometimes. It's a risk that's worth taking. Whatever you're going to be doing, you're going to be taking on a risk anyway. Not doing anything is a risk. Doing something is a risk. Now, if you're going to risk something anyway, why not do something that you actually want to? And from my point of view, if you're thinking of getting into property and you're wondering whether now is the best time, I would say yes, it is. It always is. I hope that sort of clarifies that, Celinda.
Yes, thank you. Can you repeat that saying again? I really like that.
The best time to get involved in property was yesterday. The next best time is today.
Thank you. Yeah, you really answered the question.
This usually comes from people who say, back in the 60s, I bought a house for $4,000, or in 2008, I bought this house, it was so cheap. And everyone keeps thinking, those were the best times. Guaranteed 20 years from now, someone will be saying 2020 were the best times. So it's always the case. Yesterday was the best. The next best is right now. Okay, I haven't got any questions. Was I that clear, or is it that people don't actually know how to type on the chat? Questions, people? Have people been intimidated by the fact that this is recorded, so you don't actually want to be asking questions? Is that what it is?
People understood everything, Muzzie.
Why am I not surprised that Pelagius just said something?
Over time.
Hi, Pelagia.
Hi, Muzzie.
How are you?
I'm good, but I'm the quietest, you know. Just
Oh, yes, 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 absolutely.
yeah.
I've got a question actually.
Is this Rebecca?
No, that's
Yeah, it's
Faith.
Rebecca.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Sorry, I've got a lot of. I'm in the train station, so I might have a lot of background noise.
All right, no
But
worries, no worries.
I've got a question about setting up. So aside like obviously registering the company, getting a website, is there any kind of additional regulations that you need to consider when setting up?
Dependent on the strategy that you're going for. Just tell me an example. If you're looking to set up, what are you setting up for?
So say like service accommodation, for example.
Okay. Okay. So for service accommodation, as mentioned, there's no regulations at the minute. So you're not going to find anyone saying you need fire doors, you need this, you need that. The standard housing requirements that you would have for any tenancy, any property that you live in now, those standard requirements are enough for a service accommodation. So when you're setting up, you're only setting up to compete with your other SA operators. So how nice you want the property to look. It's like that. So the only regulations that you would need to worry about is if you're going to be going for an HMO. Okay, so for service accommodation, the only regulations that are available are in London, and if I remember well, that's around about where you are. But that doesn't affect you on the setting up. It only affects you on how long you can have your guests. They've got the 90-day rule, which means you can't have the same guest take on a property for more than 90 days when you're running a service accommodation. That's the only regulation that's available right now. And the good thing about regulations with the government, they don't just mention them today and they implement them tomorrow. You get a good long, a year, 2 years in advance, knowing what's coming.
So you don't need to like, I don't know, list in some register, or there's nothing like that. I could just register this company, that's it. Oh, okay.
Not for service accommodation, no. Not for service accommodation. For HMOs, as soon as you have an HMO in an area that requires you to have a license, or if you have a property that requires a license, as soon as you apply for this license and it's approved, you automatically go into the HMO register. So that's where the regulations come when you're talking HMOs. For service accommodation, you don't need to register your property anywhere. You can tell the council what you're doing if you want to change it from paying council tax and pay business rates, but it's kind of dependent on the council. Some councils say we don't really care what you want to do, whether you want to pay business rates or you want to pay council tax, it's up to you. And some councils are a little bit fussy about it, but it's not something, out of all of the service accommodation providers I've spoken to in different areas, I've not heard anyone being penalized for not registering their property for running a service accommodation.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Hope that helps, Rebecca, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you so much for letting me join as well.
No worries, no worries. I think I saw Ritendo.
Yeah, Muzzie, is it easy to get rent to rent? How easy is it?
How easy is it? Okay. I wouldn't say easy. I would like to use the word simple. So when I say simple, there's a simple process that you follow to be able to acquire a rent-to-rent unit, dependent on what you want to do with it. But is it easy? I wouldn't want to use the word easy. No. So assuming you're starting from scratch, you've never spoken to anyone about property and you want to get involved in it, you need to start speaking to people. So you go and speak to agents, you go and speak directly to the landlord, and those conversations can be a bit intimidating. So that takes away the word easy from the process. However, if I say speak to an agent, once you've spoken to an agent, let them know what it is that you're doing by telling them this, this, and that, and then explain to them the process of how you make money out of these properties, and then set it up, and then market it, and then start making money. Simple process. It's a simple process, but it doesn't mean it's easy. Does that make sense, Ritendo?
Yeah.
But is it simple to find the accommodation? That's the question. Because is it like the same as, like, you know, when I want to go and find a property to rent as an individual, I can just go into an estate agent, and I'm sure within 3 days I can find accommodation as long as I've got my money. So is it that simple or easy, or whichever word do you want to use? That's the question.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. So it's a lot easier to find tenancy as you go to live in the property, mainly because that's the common known ways of making money out of property. So a landlord will put their property and give it to an agent to look for a standard tenant. That's normal. So that's why it's really easy for you to find that. However, finding a property where a landlord is open to let you run it as a business is where it gets a little bit difficult. Now, it can take you a day. You could find the right landlord who's open, or you could go through 20 landlords who don't want to hear anything about it for a while. So this is one of the reasons why we say don't use the term Airbnb, because Airbnb has a bad reputation in terms of taking on a property. Do not ever go to a landlord and say, can I have your property so I can put on Airbnb? There's terminologies that you use that make it seem a little bit more professional, a little bit more like you know what you're doing, and you're not actually just trying your luck.
Which are?
Which are using terms like corporate lets.
Okay.
Company lets. Okay, I've got a hand risen here. I hope that clarifies that, Rutindo.
Yes. Can I just find out something as well?
Yeah, sure.
Like for someone who is the first time and so on, do you kind of like, I know you're supporting as a group right now, as the Zimbabwe Property Network. Do you give like one-to-one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll drop my details on there so we can have a chat afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. I've got Rue M, who has 2 questions.
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. My name is Claude. Just 2 quick questions.
Yes.
On the safe accommodation. One is, I think you spoke about probably the first amount you raised to invest in that. Then you get a contract. So if you get a contract of a year and you have invested about 4 grand, 5 grand, this type of investment, is it just about the furnishings or is to spruce up the place? Then when the landlord casts that off, what happens? That's the first question. The second one is, again, similar to the same, but in terms of these short leases, in the example you gave about your place where you had bed guests, do you take deposits on those very short leases, like 2-3 days, or is it via insurance?
Okay. Okay, so the first question, if I understood it well, it's that 4 grand or the 5 grand, however much you pay up front, is it just for the furnishing and sprucing up the property, or is there something else that you're paying for? Is that right?
Yes, more like that, but it's more about the contract, because you are investing in someone else's property. That's my thinking there. That I'm putting in 4 grand into someone else's property. Am I painting the walls? Am I recarpeting? And then 12 months later, they say, no, I want to take my property back. So how do you negotiate that type of contract?
Okay, so this is one of the things that we do when we decide how much to pay up front and how much to do. Okay, so I wouldn't recommend you do works like changing carpets, adding walls and changing the orientation of the property and extensions and all that for a rent-to-rent. For a rent to rent, you want to minimize the cost as much as possible. So here's one of the things that we do. 6 months, I mentioned 6 months as I was going along. 6 months is ideally how much you want to wait before the money that you've put into a deal has come back. Okay, so when you do your due diligence and you do your calculations, you have an average figure of how much you think you're going to be making every month. Okay, so if you worked out that you're going to be making £500 a month, you multiply that 500 by 6, and you know you've got £3,000 to play with. Now, £3,000 is how much you're willing to put into this property to do what you need to do to make sure this property is serviceable. Okay. Now, if the property is completely run down and it's got too much work, far more than £3,000, you can then get back into negotiations with the landlord. Some landlords will say, I don't have money to do the work that you're asking for. They can pay for it by not paying for it. And when I say that, I mean, you can also ask for 3-4 months rent free and say, I'll do it, but I won't pay rent for 4 months to do that work for you. Okay. So ideally, you want to just get furniture. You might want to touch up the walls with paint, but then you don't need to paint the entire house. You don't want to be changing the floors and changing the carpets and stuff like that. That cost is excessive. You want to avoid paying deposits. You want to get months free rents and stuff like that. But on your calculation, ideally 6 months, we sometimes push it to 8 just to get the stuff that we need in there. So that way, once you've gone past the 8 months, you know every other penny that you're making every month is now genuinely your profit.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Now, second question, I've completely forgotten it. Sorry.
Yes, I was just using, for example, your example of your property where you had guests.
Yes,
so I'm saying in these short-term tenancies, how do you deal with the cost for repairs? Is it you take deposit or is it via insurance? How does that work?
Absolutely. Now, firstly, you can do both. You can get service accommodation insurance, which will cover you for any damages within the property and with your contents. But just like any other insurance, every time you claim, the premium goes up, so it's going to cost you even more. Ideally, you want to be paying for all the damages with their deposit and then move on. Okay, so you can do both. Obviously, the insurance will cover you for some serious damages that are going to get you and the landlord in problems. However, every guest that comes in, so that property that I showed you is on the market now for £120 a night. Okay, it's a 1-bed. It will house 4 people. Yeah, so on top of the £120 a night, you're also going to pay £250 holding deposit or £250 damage deposit.
I see.
Yeah. So if I come back into the property or you check out, I still have your deposit and I'll pay it back after my cleaners have gone in.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
the cleaners go in and tell me that, Muzzie, the property is an absolute nightmare. We've had to do this. We've had to do this. That gives me a list of justifications to keep hold of your deposit.
So for whatever shortest time someone rents it out, whether it's a night or 2 nights, you take it.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's the part I need to understand. Okay, yeah, clear.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Fantastic questions, by the way. Thank you very much.
One moment. Can I add something?
Yes, of course, Pelagia.
When you want to make people pay deposit, you make sure that you put that on your listing, because they won't pay the deposit if they don't see it on Airbnb, booking.com, blah, 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 because they will ask where it's written. And you can't make them pay what you didn't put down.
That's a really valid point. Yeah. So advertise it from the start. So when they actually see the property and they're actually booking it, they have all the information, including the fact that they have to pay a deposit. That's a really valid point, Pelagia. Thank you. Brilliant. Is anyone else got any questions?
Muzz.
Yes, Jerry.
Just a quick one with obviously deposits. We use a completely different system. So we actually don't take deposits at all to maximize the amount of bookings we get. But we use a system that checks and does pre-authorizations, if that makes sense. So it's not that we hold the person's details, but if they say they pay on booking.com and they use a virtual card, we still ask for their bank details just in case we need to make any payments on top, and then we justify it. But the reason we do that, we live in an area where we don't. Sometimes you get people who are idiots, but most of the time you actually get people who are working and they're professionals and their families. So it's also area dependent, I say, and we're based in Southampton. So yeah.
Yes, another person in Southampton.
Yes, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's an interesting point. So can I just chip in there, just to check on what Jerry is saying? So what Jerry, what you are saying is you get their bank details. So for example, it's 120 per night. They stay for 2 nights, which is 240. You go in and you see there's some damage, then you add that on what you take from their card.
That's right. We actually would take payment first. So for their booking, let's say it's £120 a night, we'd take that payment first. And then if we go into the property afterwards and there's damage, we'd then charge their card more for that damage done. But with that, saying that, it's not often we get people who damage the property.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm trying to think now during this whole thing. I think the last time someone had damage to our property was probably in February. And that was someone who I think they tripped and broke the shower or something. And it wasn't actually even a cost that was that bad. So yeah, we still hold their payment details, even if they use a virtual card, but we don't take a deposit because from where we're back, deposits tends to put people off because they think, oh, then I have to pay that on
it's an
top.
additional,
Yeah, we do the any damages afterwards rather than prior. But there's a lot of people we know and we work with who use deposits. So I'm not saying it's out of the question. It's actually a great idea. It's just something we don't use.
Okay.
That is a really good point there. Thank you, Jerry.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, most of the times, especially for me, the deposit is not because they will damage something. The deposit is because they will leave the place horribly dirty. So because if you take the deposit, if they know that you will take deposit, if they leave the place very dirty, they will leave the place next to very clean.
Completely understand. So what we do is we charge a higher cleaning fee. So what we do is, because when you actually go to your OTA, so Airbnb, booking.com, and you try and say we're holding a deposit because of cleaning issues, they try and come back to you with nonsense. So what we do is we charge a higher percentage on our cleaning fee so that we make a percentage in money on the cleaning fee as well. So it's not a case. So let's say we're paying, because we use a company and we've got in-house cleaning company. We pay the cleaners, let's say £10 an hour, but in reality, for each check-in or check-out, we're charging £35 to £40 an hour for a clean, £40 per stay. So that's the way we tackle that issue. So if they do leave the property in a mess, if it's £40, if it's more than £40 worth of cleaning, then that's not the right type of guest we should have been having for our, what we call our avatar for our business. So as I say, it's not very common, and that's the reason why we moved away from the deposit model.
Does that clear that, Pelagia?
Yeah, clear. Yeah.
It's clear, man.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that, Jerry.
Thank you.
It's a sticky one. I understand it from because I say we work with people who use deposits and they work brilliant for them. Yeah. And we haven't got to a point where it's been, and again, it's not like we've been doing it for 4 years. And it's not like a case like, we use other channels to minimize all of that damage. So we have like a verification system, we have ID requests, and when the person send their ID, we've got CCTV in all of our properties outside, even as simple as using a Ring doorbell. So, and we try and talk to all of our guests before they check in. So before they get to the property, instead of actually taking them into the property, we try and speak to them before. It gives them a direct channel to us, and it just also limits the amount of complaints you get, because after they hear that there's someone there who cares, they're like, oh, actually, I can always call this number, and sometimes they'll just message. So that's why we haven't used, that's why we haven't personally used the deposit method. But again, just putting out there, it's one of the best methods known. So it's not a case that it doesn't work. It's definitely a very valid way of doing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, I've got a question for Jerry as well.
Of course. Sorry, Muzz, I've taken over.
Whoa, you know what? I'm just thinking I'll pass the host to you and I'll walk away, shall I?
No, sorry, I just, sorry.
No, it's all good.
I've been on the call the whole time, and I saw your presentation. I was thinking that's brilliant, and then it's just because we're talking about guests, and we just use a slightly different model to everyone else for our guests.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I appreciate it. Go ahead, guys. Ask questions. I think it was Tendai.
All right. Let the lady go first.
No, it's okay. You go first, and I lost my question. I'll think about it again.
I wanted to ask Jerry. You know, when you said you don't keep deposits and somebody damaged something, right? Then are you gonna get someone to repay it? Then see how much you're gonna charge them, or...
That's exactly what we do. Yeah. So we actually, because we have a few properties in Southampton, we actually have a maintenance team, and that includes a plumber, electrician, gas safety guy, and then a handyman who does everything. And then we have a cleaning team as well. So they'll go in and they'll say, for example, let's say a TV has been damaged. They'll go in and then they'll go and replace the TV. Let's say it was £300. They put another TV in, and then they send us the invoice, and then we go through the channels to get that money back. So if we've got their card details, we can take that payment and then justify everything afterwards. But then there's always an issue of getting chargebacks with that. But the way we tend to do things is we tend to do it all with the book, and we always get the OTAs involved. So if it's a booking.com one, we speak to them first, and we make sure that we're doing everything in accordance with their guidelines. And yeah, we provide them with the invoices or any receipts for anything we've replaced. If you're using Airbnb, they're a bit better. If the guest doesn't pay, Airbnb will pay you out themselves. It does take a bit of a long while, but it's just using the right channels. You can get the people to actually pay for the damage they've caused. But we try and prevent that we try and prevent it from the onset. That's the one big thing we work on the most. We try and get the right type of people in our properties. And if they do this damage, they normally don't care about paying it. They'll say, look, they'll tell us first. They'll be like, oh, by the way, this has happened. And then they'll be like, we'll pay this or we'll do this. So yeah, it's invoices and receipts after someone has gone in, to your question.
Okay, I completely forgot my question, but then Jerry?
Yeah, I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah, okay, team, everyone who is listening, I want to say, when Jerry says they put a few houses in Southampton, it actually means 17. He's a pro.
Thanks,
He's a pro.
Sorry, I'm not a pro. No, not yet. I'm working towards that.
Is he evading taxes?
The numbers don't matter. Don't look at that, because this is the thing. When you have the same system for everything, everything will work out. It depends if you have one property or you have 100. If you have the right system and you automate the things you need to automate, it doesn't matter how many properties you have. So that, and yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Linda just asked, I think that's a question for you, Jerry. Are those on rent to rent?
So this is probably going to be for another call, but we use a completely different model. We use a service agreement model with our landlords. And the way we've got this, we start off on rent to rent, and we start off with the whole investor model where we used to have people invest, and then you guys can do it in 6 months. That's brilliant. We used to say a year. So we used to return the investment in 1 year, but we moved away from that model, and we did have a rent to rent model until the COVID situation happened. So we moved away from rent to rent, and we use what we call a service agreement, and that's between us and the landlord, where the landlord, the landlord gets, we take our 15%, that's our fee. Any money made minus any cost to the landlord, so that's your cleaning fees, your laundry, which we also run, by the way, for them. So we have our own cleaning company, and we have the laundry company we use. So we have those things, and we get into an agreement with her, which is signed with their lawyers, and it's not quite a rent to rent, but we just make 15% of any gross amount that they make. And we promise them that we're going to service their levels at 75% occupancy, for example. And for the type of property is, so we've got studios, and the biggest we do is a 4-bedroom house, just because of where we are. And as I say, we don't use a rent-to-rent model anymore. We are going to be we're going back to that model from January. We're going back to that. As I said, the reason we stepped away from it was because of the situation. But as Muzzie was saying, loads of people are actually asking us to take on their properties now. So like he was saying with that whole quote, yeah, you get into property yesterday, and if it's too late, if you haven't got to yesterday, you need to get to today. So that's where we are. We use a completely different model, and I'll speak to Muzzie about it, and I'm sure we can break it down better for you, because it's a little bit hard to explain, and it does use your lawyers, and you do need to actually have a contract which doesn't involve you paying the landlord any money. But the way we got to that was from knowing a lot of landlords and having worked with them over a period of time, and then networking, going to all these courses, this sort of calls, and just generally speaking to people, like Muzzie was saying, and that's how we got to this point. So yeah, we use a different model.
That is just brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Thank you very much.
I would have wanted to actually ask a lot more questions and allow people to ask even more, so we hear about yours. And I'm just gonna say, I think, like many people, we would want you to come and tell us more at some point. So I'm going to be expect a phone call from me. I'm going to be asking for you to come and actually talk to us about your strategy and how you get it set up. And then that way we can actually dedicate just this session to your strategy, because I think it'll be really intriguing. Awesome.
That's no problem. Yeah, as I say, I'm happy to talk to you about it, because you've got a great understanding of what's happening anyway. And as I say, it's not a new model. We've actually used it for a few years, and you probably know about it already. But it's really hard to explain over one call. And I'm not so good with presentations like you did, so you might have to make the presentation. But I'm happy to give you all the information, man. I'll send you the copies of our agreements as well. You can read through them if you want. That's all good.
That would be brilliant.
It's no problem at all, man. Honestly, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Right. I'm just gonna say thank you to everyone who's joined the call. Thank you very much appreciated. And thank you to the guys that are watching us on Facebook, on YouTube as well. The Zimbabwe Property Investors, we are on Facebook. Feel free to come and join us. There's quite a few people that just share their stories. Everyone's story is available to teach someone something. So if in what I've just shared today, you picked up one tiny little piece, then I'm happy. I'm happy, and it's done its job. So feel free to come and join us on Zimbabwean Property Investors on Facebook, and then just join the community, share your stories, learn as much as you can, and let's all succeed together, people. Thank you very much for joining us. I did say we're going to finish around about 7. I don't want to keep you guys too long. So have a lovely evening and have a very productive week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.